Hey, what's up, guys? Alright, so this week's chapter of Black Clover kind of split up into two separate parts. The first part being about Patry and Captain Vengeance, basically going into more detail and giving us the backstory of their connection between the two of them. And then the second part is kind of a reveal that we got three characters who, we haven't seen for a while now, coming back to help out basically in this war against the elves. So let's just jump right into what happened in this week's chapter. Okay, so the first part of this chapter is admittedly kind of fucking sad. And I mean, it really should not be. It really should not be, because on the surface, the first part of the chapter, like majority of the chapter, more than half of the chapter, is basically Captain William Vengeance explaining how him and Patry kind of grew as close as they are. And when you look at it just like on the surface level, that should be about it. It should just be an explanation. But then when you look deeper into it and you actually start reading the words and like reading it out, and dude, it gets fucking depressing the more you read it. I mean, seriously, the whole time I was reading this chapter, I felt like I was reading someone's goodbye letter. Like, like it kind of reminded me of those moments in anime and manga where a character knows they're going to die. They already know there's nothing to stop it. So they basically just sit down and write a letter to the person that they care about the most, basically explaining the fact that they're going to be basically giving their final goodbye to them. And that's exactly what this chapter felt like. It felt like William Vengeance basically saying his final goodbye to Patry, which ultimately, as near the end of the chapter, near the end of this part, it basically was. And you know what, I gotta admit, even though I did not really care about Captain Vengeance up until this point, like I really only cared about him as far as, his connection to Patry, after reading this like basically goodbye letter that he wrote to Patry in this chapter, it kind of hurt. It kind of hurt me deeply. It kind of felt like I was actually reading a goodbye letter from a friend or someone I actually care about. And the fact that Tabata could actually portray that, and he basically can make me feel that kind of emotion for a character I ultimately did not give two shits about. That just goes to show you how great of a writer and storyteller that he actually is. But anyway, basically in Vengeance's goodbye letter to Patry, he explains the fact that even at a young age, even before Patry was even aware of himself and the fact that he was being reincarnated, he felt his presence inside his body, and he felt like it was basically his duty to protect him. And it's kind of weird to see. It's kind of not weird. It's kind of like basically heartwarming. You could tell exactly how good of a person Vengeance actually was, because he was a kid. He already had the scars on his face. He was basically being treated like shit by everyone else. But despite all that, despite the fact that no one in his life at that time gave him any kind of kindness, his first thought when he felt the fact that he had some kind of other presence inside his body was that he had protected. That just goes to show you how great of a character, or like how great of a person he actually was. And then it kind of fast forwards a little bit, and then it goes to basically not when he first met Julius, but when he was like a little bit older, and we see Julius when he was basically just a captain. Which, by the way, when they talk about Julius when he was basically just a Magic Knight captain, they mentioned that he was actually the captain of the Ashen Deer, not the Azure Deer, which they actually mentioned in the chapter, like in a little little editor note, that basically this was not a typo. This was not like kind of some kind of mistake. Now, they don't really go into any detail about this change, so I'm guessing basically when he was Magic Knight Captain, he was in charge of the Ashen Deer, and then once he got promoted to Magic Emperor, whoever replaced him changed it to the Azure Deer, or maybe it was just basically that was what his Magic Knight Order was called, and then once he left, it was disbanded, and then the Azure Deer was created instead. I don't know. Like I said, it doesn't really go into much detail about it. But yeah, we end up seeing Julius in this chapter basically during the flashback, and we see that even before Vengeance got his grimoire and became a Magic Knight, Julius could tell that there was great potential in him and that he was actually a really good person. So even at a young age, I think he was like 14, 12, something like 13, 14 in the flashback, Julius came up to him with the mask that we always see Vengeance wearing. He came up to him with the mask, gave it to him, and said, "Hey, join my order." Like, basically asking him to become a member of his team once he gets his grimoire. Which this was basically a big surprise to Vengeance, because Julius basically, he said in this chapter, was the first person to show him any kind of kindness. And after that moment, after that meeting, or I assume they met before that, but after like he got to know Julius and to see exactly how kind he was, he basically devoted himself to Julius the same way he devoted himself to protecting Patry. And he even mentions in the chapter that the two of them like became the two most important people in his lives. And that's basically why it ended up hurting him so much when he was forced to choose between Patry and Julius, because basically their goals, Julius's goal of protecting the Clover Kingdom and Patry's goal of basically destroying the Clover Kingdom, they clashed. And ultimately, Vengeance couldn't choose. He cared about both of them too much to choose between one of them. So he left it up to Patry and Julius to decide by basically letting them fight. And at the end of the day, we know that basically Julius lost. Patry ended up winning that fight. Now, here's the thing that kind of caught me off guard about that. Patry only won because he used a dirty trick. He threatened the civilians instead of, fighting Julius one-on-one. And in the confusion, when Julius basically went to protect the civilians, that's when Patry was able to land the killing blow. And this is actually what confused me about it: the fact that Vengeance seems okay with this. The fact that Patry won in this way. Because, like I said earlier, we know that Vengeance is actually a really good person. He actually does care about people, and you would think that something like that would be not okay with him. You would think he would kind of be angry with Patry about the fact that he basically cheated to win. But for some reason, he doesn't seem to regard it. He doesn't seem to basically have any anger towards Patry for this. He kind of just accepts it, which kind of flies in the face of his character, in my opinion. But you gotta try to plot any way you can, and it just him accepting Patry doing that is needed to drive the plot forward. So I'm just gonna have to accept it. Also, real quick, when when Vengeance got his grimoire, they mentioned that Patry's grimoire showed up as well. Now, it doesn't really go into much detail exactly how it showed up, which is kind of weird to me. I'm kind of confused about that. How exactly did Patry end up getting his grimoire as well? Because it makes sense that two separate souls would have two separate grimoires. But did Patry's grimoire show up to him during the grimoire ceremony, like Williams did, or did it just appear one day out of nowhere? That's the one thing that doesn't really make any sense to me. Because if his grimoire did show up to him or appear to him during the ceremony, like Vengeance's did, wouldn't people notice that Vengeance had two grimoires approach him during the ceremony? Wouldn't that be kind of like big news? It wouldn't have been a big, basically indication that Patry, that Vengeance actually was Patry the entire time. This is basically just a little plot hole that I found. It's not really all that important. It doesn't matter in the long run. It's just something that I kind of, thought up when I was reading the chapter. But anyway, after all that, after we go back through the flashback of, Patry killing off Julius, we basically get Vengeance his final goodbye. He basically says, Patry, you're my closest friend. You're someone I consider basically a twin to myself. He basically tells Patry that he loves him, and then he goes away. He gives Patry full control of the body. He's not going to switch back and forth anymore. And Patry even acknowledges that when he wakes up. He I guess he passed out after he activated reincarnation magic. He basically says when he wakes up that he can't sense, or not that he can't sense, that basically Vengeance had gone into a deep sleep and he most likely would never wake up from it. Anyway, Patry says his final goodbye to Vengeance. He heads off to meet up with Lich and the other elves and basically help them destroy the Clover Kingdom. And then this is when part 2 starts, and we get the huge bombshell of, alright, as soon as Patry leaves, as soon as he takes off, we see Raditz' grimoire start to glow. And we find out that in death, literally after the reincarnation magic had killed him, Valtos, and Sally, he learned, in that exact moment, he finally learned a new spell. And basically the spell lets him put souls of the dead back into their original bodies. So literally as soon as he died, he basically returned his soul into his body, and he got up. So yeah, he's back. And he also ended up using that spell to put back Sally and Valtos' souls back into their body as well. And we see the two of them actually get up, and it's kind of like all of the burn marks that were on them kind of just fall away, kind of like cracking a shell off an egg. So yeah, the three of them wake up. Raditz is pissed off at Patry because this is the second time he's been betrayed. First time he felt like he was betrayed by the Clover Kingdom, so he joined up with Midnight Sun's Eye. Now Patry ended up betraying him too. And he's just pissed off. He just wants to destroy everything. And he heads off with the idea of basically getting his revenge on Patry for betraying him. And once he heads off, he ends up meeting up with Asta and the rest of the Black Wolves. And he basically tells them, you're going to help us get our revenge, and you don't have a say in the matter. And that's pretty much all that happened in the chapter. It literally ends off with Raditz showing up with Valtos and Sally saying, hey, you Black Wolves are going to help us get our fucking revenge. Now that Raditz finally learned the second spell, I kind of have two questions for it. Alright, so the first one, when we see him basically put Sally and Valtos' souls back in their body, at first, they get up and they, you think that they're alive again. And then in the final shot of the chapter, it's kind of weird. It kind of looks like they're alive, but they're not. It's kind of like they're zombies in a way. And it has me wondering if he's actually in full control of them or not, or if they actually were fully reincarnated. It's weird because alright, Sally, she looks like a full-on zombie. She looks crazy. She doesn't even look like she's fully aware of herself. And we don't even get to see Valtos' face. So It has me wondering if whether or not Roddy's is in control of them. You know, if he's controlling them like he does all the other zombies. We'll probably figure out that in the next chapter. Now, the other question I have is actually, I have to give full credit to another YouTuber whose review I was watching before I actually started up my own review. And that is Savage Soy Panda. I'm actually a fan of his. I'm subscribed to him on my other channel. But anyway, in his review, he kind of brought up the fact that now that Rades has this new spell that basically can return his soul into his body upon death, doesn't that kind of make him immortal now? Doesn't that mean that basically as long as his body is in one piece or is basically still, you know, functional, doesn't that mean he can't be killed? Because even if he is killed, he'll just bring his soul back into his body and reincarnate himself. So basically, didn't he just kind of become OP in a sense? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below if you think that that's actually the case for him now. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the chapter review. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comment section down below how you felt about the chapter. Like, did you feel the same way I did about the whole, you know, first part? That, like, it was basically a goodbye letter from Vengeance to Patry. Let me know about that in the comment section. And let me know your thoughts on basically Rades, Sally, and Valtos coming back. But yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like. Subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts. And catch you guys later. Peace.